welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the Nonprofit Show. I'm really excited to have this conversation today with Janelle Moravek, Executive Director of Youth and Family Counseling. We're going to be talking about how HR is the ED's best friend. Okay, Janelle, welcome.
Thanks, Julia. It's great to be here.
It's going to be a lot of fun because Janelle and I were chatting in the last, or in the green room, that in the last 100 days of this new administration, HR and the labor pool has dramatically shifted, especially in the nonprofit sector. And so this is going to be really an interesting conversation that more and more of us need to have. And maybe we hadn't planned for it. So we're going to be talking about HR, how we lead our organizations, and understanding that this needs to be something in our toolbox. Another thing that's in the toolbox of the nonprofit show are our amazing partners. They include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. I'm Julia C. Patrick, CEO of the American Nonprofit Academy and one of the co-hosts of the Nonprofit Show. So Janelle Moravek, Executive Director, Youth and Family Counseling. Talk to us briefly before we get into this topic about your organization, where you're located, and what you do.
Those are really good questions. So I'm actually sitting in Libertyville, which is a suburb northwest of Chicago, about 25 miles northwest of Chicago. And we're in Lake County, Illinois. We do outpatient mental health services. So we're a nonprofit counseling center. We do deliver services. That's what we do all day, 5 days a week, between the hours of 9 and 9. But what we get really excited about is making those services accessible to people from all walks of life. So we serve clients across the lifespan, and we really reach out to those populations or individuals who can't access care in traditional ways and who need a little boost to overcome those barriers that they're experiencing when they're trying to get that mental health support and education. Most of our clients are children and adolescents. About 70% of our clients are low income. And when I stepped into this role in 2009, our budget was about $680,000. Today, our organization has a budget of $2.8 million, and we have 3 locations. So we've had a lot of growth over the past, 15 years, and it's been an amazing journey. And HR has been so key to everything that we've been able to do as an organization and for our clients. So
it's so interesting because you can't just hire a warm body. You have to have highly credentialed talent.
Yes.
So it's got to be even more of a structural issue for your organization.
Yes, we when you think about our workforce, yes, we need a highly educated, licensed and credentialed, experienced, talented, and we don't pay anywhere near what they can make in the, I'm going to say, private practice arena. And so we've always had to have really creative ways where we're creating an experience for our employees that attracts the therapist that we need, the employee that we need, and that also delivers the level of excellence that we need to be delivering. In addition to all of that, I'm adding in the extra oomph of our behavioral health workforce is mostly highly resourced individuals who can afford to pursue a master's degree, take time off to do a clinical internship. And as we seek to change the demographic of that workforce, changing the work environment and the compensation and all of those expectations, creating a ladder where someone can stay at the organization has become critical. So even though we only have $2.8 million budget and I have 28 employees, we do have a career ladder, and I think we do a lot with what we have at our disposal. So
Wow. I love it.
this is one of my favorite topics.
Well, let's dig into it, because
Yeah.
I love how you've helped us to understand a framework of what you're doing. Talk about transactional excellence equaling or impacting risk management, because this is fascinating.
Yeah. So, when I say transactional excellence, it is what you have to do first. And it's the dotting your I's and crossing your T's. You've got to be compliant. You've got to follow the rules. You've got to do some really foundational things, because if you don't, there's going to be a lawsuit or a something that's going to come down the pipe that, quite frankly, has the risk of having really big financial repercussions for the organization. So, most people think, oh gosh, you're worried about minors in your facility, and, don't have a couch that's too big because then you can have sex on it. That honestly is not what I'm worried about. I'm worried about those little teeny tiny details where things can slide and then you don't even know. It's that, is the person classified correctly? Are your policies up to date? That's where we're going to get into trouble. The other place is with disgruntled employees. They don't honestly, I've had employees leave because they're making a lot of money, or because the opportunity that they're looking for isn't here at YFC. But a lot of times they're leaving because those little things, we get them wrong, and it just makes them mad. And it's annoying. And they're like, I'm done with this. So, yeah,
that's really interesting. And I so appreciate that you put that back on your organization. I've mentioned this, I say this all the time, but we've done more than 1,300 episodes in 6 years. I can count on one hand the number of executive directors or CEOs that have said, we need to look back at ourselves and understand that our staffing changes are often, they come about, or they're pushed forward because of something we've done. And so I love that you brought that up. That's fascinating.
How can you not? I mean, I think about sometimes in both the case of a regrettable and a not regrettable departure, right? There are, it's always two parties in play. And as much as in my role as a CEO, as a fundraiser, as a manager, I'm all about where is that Venn diagram and where is that connection? And what am I doing? I got to do everything I can to make sure that I am holding my piece of that diagram and allowing people to engage when it's appropriate. And when it's not appropriate, to bow out and leave appropriately. I love a good separation.
I'm in here standing in my studio in front of the camera, and I'm thinking to myself, if you ran an animal welfare system, or you ran a museum or a cultural institution, would you have the same degree of understanding and process? But because you're in counseling and mental health, maybe you have more of an understanding of the frailties of the human spirit.
I don't know. I think I am not as I am not a counselor by training. I was a French major, a government major in college, came into fundraising and came into nonprofit management that way. I love systems level work and thinking about things at that higher systems level. And I've learned a lot. I don't know that it's because it's certainly my organization, and I think all counseling centers are high touch. It's a high touch industry, right? We're very relational in our work and in our how. And I also just think it's because I've been here a long time. I've been at youth and family counseling since 2000. I stepped into this role in 2009, and because of that, I've seen a lot. I've had the opportunity to do the same thing multiple times and learn what works, what doesn't work, and to correct my own behavior. I think that might be, for me, a stronger driver than my innate abilities to intuit other
Well,
people.
it's really interesting because I feel like this is like one of HR and staffing, really one of the top issues of our day right now for the nonprofit sector, knowing that things change. So let's get into another aspect of that, because you advise us that strong HR organizes people, talents, and tasks. And so I'm very interested in this because most of the time we just think that it's like, the people, and that HR doesn't get into the weeds on job description and task management and some of that. So what do you see here with this? Because it's an organizational aspect, right? In performance for the
Mhm.
whole organization. What does that look
Yeah.
like to you?
I, I think about the organization, it's a puzzle. It's a beautiful puzzle that, with whatever picture you want to envision in your puzzle, and everyone is a different piece. Um, and we all have a role to play in that. And so it's really, when I think about organizing the work and then organizing the people and then the tasks, first, when you're organizing the work, everyone has a role to play. And I attended a conference, maybe 10 years ago, like one of those one-day workshops. And it was this awesome nonprofit HR job description. Everything comes back to the job description. And I like things to line up nicely. And to me, that made so much sense. There are 10 competencies in nonprofits that this book argued. And so your organization needs to have all 10 of those things covered. Well, who does it? So, for example, you have financial management, you've got advocacy, you've got communication, direct service, you have IT, you've got all these different things. Not everyone's going to do everything. Some people are going to do some things and not others. Some people are going to do in maybe 3 buckets. But when you think about it, how we organize our organizational charts is how we organize our work. And so everyone has a role and an objective that feeds into the organizational mission. Once you have that role, then you can organize your people in that role. And then once they're in there, then your job description is the tasks that person does. And so I feel like one of my mantras is plan your work, work your plan. And as I lean into HR more than ever before here at YFC in this post-COVID era, I am sharing all of my HR knowledge with my team of rising middle managers and assistant directors and directors. And everything starts with let's plan our work. You can't write a job description until you've reviewed all the things about what you want this person to do, right? So I was just meeting with my clinical director, and we're going to be hiring for a new client support specialist who does intakes and triages cases. And we have a lovely job description. And to really do a really good job of marketing, interviewing, selecting that person, we need to pull up a little bit and make sure that we're all on the same page with what's that role's purpose, right? What are the characteristics that we need? What kind of person do we need? Like, what does that ideal candidate look like? And then, what's awesome about the job? What's not awesome about the job? The job is really hard. You're sitting in an office all day, behind a desk for the most part, listening to people's really hard stories. So, what makes that fulfilling? What makes that challenging? And then, what kind of questions do we need to ask in that interview to suss out the candidate's proficiency around those skills that we need? So that, to me, that we're just planning our work.
Right.
And if you don't have that solid process up front, you're not going to get the right candidate. You're not going to make the right hire.
Wow. I'm fascinated that you would kind of call out your own crap. I cleaned that up. That you would say, what's great about this job, but what is a challenge? And I love that because that's honest and that can help level set what is going to go on. Right. I think that's really,
Yeah,
really smart.
you have to, because that's where you lose people, right?
Yes.
Because jobs are hard. It's not, we don't go to fun every day. We go to work every day. And work should be fulfilling and satisfying and fun sometimes. But it's also really hard. It's where we grow. And understanding what those challenges are means that we can develop strategies and introduce tools to sort of mitigate those challenges and help our staff address them.
Mhm.
And so I think it's really interesting. Another thing that I've noticed is when I think about sort of resiliency and grit, we now have 4 generations in the workplace
Yes.
and very different ways of engaging with others and experiencing work. And we've had to really lean into building a supportive and resilient, building a supportive culture and enhancing and strengthening employees' resilience because the work is hard. It's really hard. It's a different generation.
Yeah, I love that you said that. And I think that's like another crazy layer to
Mhm.
add in that is somewhat of a new problem, right? A new issue on top of all the things that we're talking about and trying to deal with your mission, your service area, growth, fundraising, management. We have this really interesting demographic issue that is out of your control. It's out of my control, but we
Right.
have to understand it, right? So let's dig into that a little bit more because we're talking about ultimately succession planning. As we have this wave, they call it the silver tsunami, people leaving, retiring, and then we have, new technology, new talent, educated talent, the talent that's been educated in a different way, performs in a
Mhm.
different way. How do we think about succession planning and how deep do we go into it so that we're not creating fear and that we're actually looking at opportunity? You used the word ladder.
Uh, yes, I mean at YFC we have a ladder for clinicians.
Gotcha.
So it's actually, I would say it has 4 or 5 rungs, spanning from when they could enter our organization as an intern. But there's a whole, it takes 7 years for a clinician to become a journeyman. And so there's pretty distinct developmental phases within that we've aligned our ladder with, and provided employees with this visibility of, listen, when you come in, you've just graduated from your master's. You, Here's what you're going to, yes, you're going to do the same work as the person who's been working here for 5 years, and is fully licensed. But you can do it at a different proficiency level. And what we want you to do is we want you to just focus on seeing a lot of different kinds of clients, strengthening those foundational skills, and, and we're gonna track your proficiency and support you in growing. But then by the time you're ready to sit for your licensure exam and move up to the next level, you're going to be competent, and your needs are going to be different. Your confidence is going to be different. And so that means that, like, addressing the needs of that group are very different. Now they're looking for something new, and we're there to support them in, all right, what do you want to do next? Is there something you're really interested in? You want to do a deeper dive? And then after they've been doing that for a few years, sometimes they're like, I think I want to become a supervisor. I want to turn around and teach. And others are like, I just want to work with my clients because I really love my clients. So having those opportunities to try out those things are super important. So for me, you're always moving clinicians along, and you're always going to lose people at any point
Yeah.
along that continuum. So it's a question of, so we have sort of, the bulk of our employees at YFC are clinical. they're clinicians. But then we have those other administrative and your
Sure.
typical other roles that you have.
Yeah.
You have to have some cross training. We are so small. We don't have, you know, two executive directors. So when I leave, there has to be someone else who can step in if something happens in my absence. If my clinical director's out, her assistant directors have to be able to step in and manage. And so how do we do that? We're cross training, we're delegating, we are, we're giving opportunities to walk alongside and see if you like it, try it out. If you do, then listen, there's so much work here to do. I'm happy to share parts of my job with other people. That's really flexible. Like, sure, if, for example, if you really love continuing ed and teaching, do you want to run that continuing ed program? Happy to take that off my plate, right? So giving someone those opportunities to flex different muscles while still being at the organization in formal and informal ways, that's succession planning because you're building those skills.
Mm-hmm.
And for me as the leader, behind the scenes, I know that I'm watching certain skills and I'm tracking and really wanting to see particular ones develop in the people I've tagged for leadership. So it becomes succession planning so that, wouldn't it be great if when you left it was, I won the lottery and I'm going to move to fill in the blank, Hawaii. And you're like, no problem. Well, this, here's the job and somebody else can do absolutely everything until we can find a replacement. And, you have this charted course. So.
Well, I think the health of your organization, obviously, it speaks volumes. But I've got to believe that your own mental health as a leader is really impacted. That the fear is de-escalated when it might not be perfect, but that you have a team and places to fill in. I mean, for somebody who becomes ill or has a family member ill, we're talking. Longer term issues, not just the flu, but somebody that you want to keep or you want to navigate through their issues, and keep, as they say, the organization whole. I think it's a fascinating way to be looking at this.
Well, we have to because we do clinical care and we establish really long-term relationships with our clients, and they can tolerate a vacation, but who steps in to take care of them if something happens to their therapist? Right. And remember that what we were just talking about, the work is really hard. Mm-hmm. And if we can't address, as a mental health organization, if we can't address and allow our clinicians the space to address their own mental health, that's a real problem for our world. Yeah. Because there aren't enough of us. So, yeah, it's a moving target for sure. And I feel like, I think I said it before, I've done the same thing over and over and over again, but it's always a different organization. And that's what makes it fun. But some of these HR fundamentals, they don't change. And I sleep better at night when I know that there are multiple people holding up the scaffolding of the organization. It's not just me. It's all of my managers. And HR is scaffolding, right? It's those systems, it's those protocols for how you manage the work and the people. That's the bulk of our budget is the people. So it can't just be me holding up the scaffolding. It has to be everybody, all the managers, all the supervisors at the organization. And we only do that by developing competencies and talent and growing their talents.
I love that approach. And I in the short amount of time we have left, because this conversation has just flown by, it's been so rich and so interesting to me, given that we don't talk about this enough, right? We don't really talk about our own teams and how we develop them, until we've got something, going on. But I want to reach into your process in terms of understanding HR management. There is fractional support versus full time. Talk to us about what it is you're using and what that looks like.
That's a really good question, and it's another one of those moving targets, right? So there's so many ways you could skin a cat. You can have an HR person on site. You can outsource. I will say that for YFC, what was super helpful was outsourcing when we were big in growth and getting bigger, because that really helped us put in the systems that we need.
Okay.
And now that we are a little bit bigger, the conversation has shifted. Our needs as an organization are different. We need to have that transactional excellence. But now I know enough to provide some of the thought leadership. And what we really also need is a lot of employee relations, right? But that should be HR and, right? Everyone else who's supervising and working with people.
Right.
So I think it really depends on some key things, how big is the organization? How many employees do you have? Where are you in your stage of development? For me, getting an HRIS, one of those human resource information systems, up and running is a big hurdle. It's really hard to get up there, but once you are, it's great because it forces compliance. It automates, it systematizes, it helps hold that scaffolding, right, of that you need. Then you can have HR people help and feed off of that, but it's also kind of its own thing. So, yeah.
It's interesting. You said that, and I was thinking back. I had a really interesting opportunity to have dinner with the CEO of a Fortune 100 company years ago. And it was very intimate, just a couple of people. And I asked him, I said, and he had 10,000 employees around the world. And I said, what's your biggest stress? I've got to believe it's your people. And he said, it was until I focused all my energy on getting the right HR people. And he said, and this was probably, honest to goodness, this was probably 20 years ago. And he said, once I did that, I just shed off all the stress that I had about the people aspect of the company. And I could focus in on what our business was and then let basically somebody else take the brunt of the work.
Yeah.
And I have thought about that so often because 10,000 employees blew my mind. At the time, I had 10, and I was overwhelmed with that.
Mm-hmm.
And so, it's a really interesting picture that you've painted for us about this whole system and looking at this in a different way. I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. I mean, I love HR. I think in my next life, I want to go back and be an organizational psych person. I think it's so fun, so interesting.
Well, Janelle, you've really, you're in such a fascinating space because it's all about the people and the issues and the humanness of our of daily living and daily working. And so this a heavy lift to be in your place. I'm just so delighted that you could join us. Janelle Miller Moravek, Executive Director of Youth and Family Counseling. You can learn more about their wonderful organization and the work that they do. Counselingforall.org. Check out their website. It's really interesting. You can learn about what the team does and their approach and their history of growth. And it's really inspirational. But I'm like all in. I'm now Team Janelle, big time.
Awesome. You're hired.
If it weren't so damn cold in the Chicago area, I'd be more interested.
I don't blame you.
Oh, holy moly. Well, it's really been fun. And I think that you've given us all a lot to think about. And we're going to have to kind of really, I think, as we look at this labor market shifting for so many different reasons, it'll be really fascinating to see how you and your team navigate this, and we'll definitely keep in touch. We navigate the nonprofit show every day because we have amazing sponsors, and they include Bloomerang, American Nonprofit Academy, Staffing Boutique, JMT Consulting, Interim Executives Academy, Your Part-Time Controller, and Fundraisers Friday. We are very, very honored and blessed to have them. I just got to show you this great comment that came up that said, so are we, Team Janelle. Well, you know that you have rocked it when you get your own hashtag during a live show.
That's my clinical director.
Well, that's great. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Hey, as we end each and every episode of the Nonprofit Show, we leave with this message. And today I say it every day, but I think about it in a different context. And today, thinking about how we look at our own teams and our internally for our organizations. And our message is this: to stay well so you can do well. Thank you, Janelle.
Thank you. That's a great message.